time to have a look at one of the oldest Train Sim World routes. Specifically, one to which I haven't paid that much attention, partly because I've been focusing on more modern routes. In any case, here are my 2 cents on Ruhr-Sieg Nord, Hagen to Finnentrop, only the 5th route ever made for TSW. RSN was first released way back in August 2018, and the version compatible with Train Sim World 5 costs 36 New Zealand dollars at full price. This route is actually a partial remake of one that already existed in TS Classic. Originally, the route coverage went from Hagen to Siegen, but for whatever reason, DTG cut the coverage at Finnentrop for the TSW version. The section from Hagen to Finnentrop is 62 kilometres, or about 38 miles long, with 5 intermediate stations. But due to the winding nature of the line, it's a fairly slow run compared to most of TSW's German routes, with the speed limits ranging from 70 to 120 kilometres per hour. As for motive power, the route includes the Deutsche Bahn BR-143 and BR-185/2 electric locomotives for passenger and freight services respectively. Both locomotives were new to TSW at the time of RSN's release, but have since been recycled and resold in 2 or more routes. This is especially annoying in the case of the BR-185/2. RSN is a predominantly freight route, and it comes with 4 different wagon types. These are the Habens 344, Rus-T 645, Shims-U 708, and Shims-TTU 722. For reference, the BR-143s were built by LEW Hennigsdorf between 1984 and 1991, while the BR-185/2s were built by Bombardier between 1999 and 2009, I think. They are examples of the F-140 AC2 variant in the Bombardier Trax family. In the time since RSN's release, Dovetail have recycled and resold the red BR-185/2 in 4 subsequent routes, but those versions all have slightly different branding. In any case, I now think the BR-185 is one of the most boring German locomotives in TSW, but there's at least 2 other variants included with more recent routes that are not painted red. The MRCE BR-185/5 is included with Rhein-Ruhr-Osten and Nahverkehr Dresden, while the Railpool BR-185/6 is included with Tauern to Rump, Dresden to Chemnitz, and is also about to bear witness to something utterly ridiculous. The coaches included with Ruhr-Sieg Nord are the 4th generation Doppelstockwagen coaches, built by Bombardier between 1997 and 2008. Deutsche Bahn designates this variant of the cab car as DAB PBZFA 767/2, while the normal coaches are designated as DB PZA 780/0. All these years later, we still don't have the high-entry Dostos in TSW, or any of the earlier generations, for that matter. Instead, Dovetail have recycled the same low-entry 4th-gen Dostos more times than I care to remember, and it's about time they modelled more variants for the game. Since they've done high-entry Dostos in TS Classic, why can't they do them for TSW as well? 2 separately sold locomotive add-ons are available with extra scenarios and services for Ruhr-Sieg Nord. The first one is the BR-155 electric locomotive, released in April 2019, and the second is the BR-363 diesel shunter, released in November 2020. The versions of each locomotive compatible with TSW5 cost a staggering 29 New Zealand dollars each, and both classes have reappeared in new liveries as part of 1 or more subsequent route add-ons. The Press Blue BR-155 comes with Bremen to Oldenburg, while the blue and white BR-363 comes with Nahverkehr Dresden, Tauern to Rump, and the Maintalbahn. Why Dovetail reused the BR-363 as many times as they did is anyone's guess. Timetable mode includes 57 playable services for the BR185/2, 85 for the BR143, and 42 with the Class 767/2 cab car leading. The total service count isn't particularly high, but I don't know whether or not it's realistic for this route. Out of personal preference, I usually run the passenger trains instead of freight. And incidentally, the BR143 can substitute into the freight services. And I generally like having both an older and more modern locomotive included with the same route because they each offer a distinctly different driving experience. But in saying that, I don't particularly like the default RSN version of the BR143 because she's too simple compared to the later Norfolker Dresden or Taranto Rump versions, and the sounds aren't as good as those two. In the case of the RSN version, the locomotive already has the reverser lever inserted and brake key activated when you load a timetable mode service, so there's less to do when you're setting up the cab. Regardless of which version you choose to drive, the BR143 doesn't have a conventional throttle, and neither do the BR112 or BR114. Instead, these locomotives have a speed selector and a force selector. The latter is controlled by pressing the R and F keys, while the former is controlled by the A and D keys, and I think it should be the other way round because, in its current state, it's pretty confusing. Someone suggested, in a comment on my previous video, that the force selector should be set to between 40 and 70% when starting away from a station to avoid wheel slip. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the people who explained what the force selector does. As for the BR185/2, the older RSN version is almost too easy to set up. As is the case in the BR143, the reverser handle is already inserted, and it appears that you can't remove it, for whatever reason. All you have to do on this newer locomotive is set the handle to neutral, then release the brakes, put the reverser in forward and open the throttle. I've found that, whenever I try to get the BR185/2 moving with a heavy freight train, you pretty much have to go straight to full throttle to initially set the train in motion, then ease back on the throttle as you accelerate to reduce the risk of wheel slip. The locomotive's acceleration rate isn't too bad, but it still depends on the weight of the train or if she's running light engine. As for the cab car, this thing has a conventional throttle instead of the BR143's unusual setup. Typically, the locomotive is at the northern or Hagen end of the train, while the cab car is at the southern or Finnentrop end. It takes around 55 minutes to complete a full run from Hagen to Finnentrop, or vice versa, if you run the RB91 service, which stops at all stations and generally runs hourly in each direction. There's also the bizarre RB56 shuttle from Hagen Hauptbahnhof to Lettmatte, which only consists of one locomotive and one cab car. I have no idea why this service runs with such a weird formation. The BR155, otherwise known as Electric Container, adds 16 new services to the timetable, with these being coal trains formed entirely of FALNS 183 hoppers, which are actually included with the BR155. The locomotive can also substitute into the normal services that would otherwise be hauled by the BR185/2 or BR143. As for the BR363 diesel, she only adds 13 new services to the timetable, and primarily shunts wagons in the timber yard at Bola and other places throughout the route. I should also mention that other German locomotives can also substitute into the RSN timetable, but they don't add any additional services. Amongst the regular freight and passenger services, there's also a very unusual working that's essentially just a locomotive cavalcade. It departs Hagen's large freight yard at 10 o'clock in the morning and runs down to Kreuztal, but it's split into two parts with the break at Verdol, and you can only drive the second part as far as Finnentrop, of course. The convoy waits in the loop at Verdol to let other trains pass, and if you've got the Hamburg to Lübeck add-on, then a BR112 will sometimes appear in this convoy instead of one of the default RSN locomotives. In the time since Ruhr-Sieg Nord was released, Dovetail revisited Hagen Hauptbahnhof when they made the Rhein-Ruhr-Osten add-on in October 2019. That route only runs for around 30.5 kilometers between Wuppertal-Steinbeck and Hagen Hauptbahnhof, but for various reasons, I think it's pretty bad. In any case, the BR422 electric multiple unit from Rhein-Ruhr-Osten doesn't layer onto the RSN version of Hagen Hauptbahnhof, and the BR143s and Dostos don't layer onto the RRO version, so whichever one you get, the station is unrealistically quiet. As for the Vossloh G6 diesel locomotive, she doesn't layer onto RSN either, and neither does the blue and white BR363. But other locomotives that do layer or substitute into the timetable on the older route include, but may not be limited to, the BR112 from Hamburg to Lübeck, BR114 from Frankfurt to Fulda, the Press Blue BR155 from Bremen to Oldenburg, the BR182, first released as an add-on for rapid transit, both the DB Red and Railpool variants of the BR193 Vectron, and finally, the BR218, which was initially released as an add-on for Hamburg to Lübeck. In its original condition, RSN did not have functional passenger information screens at the stations, and the visible roads all looked completely deserted with no vehicles present. Both of these issues have since been fixed, but the route still looks a little dated in some areas, especially where the scenery details and lighting are concerned. But in saying that, I don't really like the newer TOD4 lighting all that much, especially in autumn. If you complete the mastery challenges, you'll be able to walk inside the old signal box at Finnentrop and watch the trains from there, but none of the equipment in here is actually functional. More recent routes, such as Islands Line 2022 by Rivet Games and Blackpool Branches by Just Trains, also feature signal boxes that you can walk into, but those ones are not locked behind the mastery wall. Although I don't revisit it too often, I kind of like the Ruhr-Sieg Nord add-on. The route is quite scenic and a bit more relaxed than most of the more recent German routes, and offers a reasonable variety of passenger and freight services, especially when you've got the BR155 and BR363 installed as well. The route gets a 6.5 out of 10 from me, and I can confidently recommend it to other Train Sim World players who haven't got it yet, be they newcomers or veterans.